We are live. Beautiful. Hello, folks at WKYC. 3, 2, and 1. Survive in advance. That is the motto in the month of March. But let me make one small addition to that. Thrive in advance, because that's what Michigan did in the Sweet 16, picking up a huge win to advance past Florida State. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Big Ten podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ben Stevens. It is Monday, March 29th, and today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Go to BuiltBar.com and use the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your next order. And the Big Ten is still dancing in the month of March. And on this Monday episode, it's another Stevens and Stevens podcast, joined by the host of Locked On Buckeyes, Jay Stevens, my right-hand man for these Monday shows to recap still the Big Ten in the NCAA tournament, the Big Ten in the Big Dance, at least for one more day, Jay Stevens. And that's all you can ask for in the month of March, just to see one more game out of your favorite basketball team, the Michigan Wolverines, getting past Florida State in a pretty dominant performance on Sunday evening.
Survive in advance, Big Ten, Ben. That's what happened. That's what we saw on Sunday afternoon. It wasn't the only news that happened in Big Ten country, on the men's side at least, on Sunday. But when Michigan's playing basketball, all eyeballs are glued until we get some type of notification on our phone that says a certain school hired a former basketball player at that school to be their new head coach.
And we will get to the breaking news of Indiana finding its new head men's basketball coach in a former IU player, as Jay alluded to right there. Mike Woodson, the longtime NBA coach, assistant currently with the New York Knicks, was a head coach for the Hawks and the Knicks back in the day. We will discuss what that means for Indiana Hoosiers basketball as we go forward. But the focus is still the Big Dance, because the Big Ten is still alive in the Big Dance. Michigan beating Florida State by 18 points, 76-58. And Jay, I've said all along, losing Isaiah Livers was going to be a huge hurdle to get over for Juan Howard's team. But I thought if any team in the Big Ten had the makeup to do so, it would be this Michigan team, now advancing to the Elite Eight because of their team brand of basketball. 4 scorers for Michigan in double figures, including Shaundi Brown off the bench with 12 points. They were led by both Brandon Johns Jr., who has stepped up tremendously in Isaiah Livers' absence, and Hunter Dickinson. They both had 14 points. And I said, Jay, on our Friday episode here of Locked On Big Ten, previewing the Michigan-Florida State matchup, they needed Franz Wagner to play very well for all 40 minutes. He was great in the second half against LSU, but if they were going to beat the Noles, they needed Franz Wagner to be great for a 40-minute basketball game, and that's exactly what he did. 13 points. He had 10 rebounds, a double-double, and 5 assists, filling it up across the stat sheet and playing some tremendous on-ball defense against whoever Florida State threw against him. Scotty Barnes, MJ Walker, Anthony Polite, everybody. Franz Wagner was a key piece of Michigan's victory on Sunday, and Michigan still alive, advancing to the Elite Eight. They will face the winner of Alabama and UCLA, a game that is being played as Jay and I are recording on this Sunday evening. Jay, what did you make of the Wolverines' effort in that win over Florida State on Sunday?
I was really impressed in the second half as far as how they not really changed their approach, but how they really attacked inside. I like Juwan Howard. I liked him as a player at Michigan. I was a youngster, but I still liked the Fab Five and what they did for college basketball. I liked him in the NBA, a solid glue guy. He got knocked in Miami for being the guy behind the bench, being there as just kind of your assistant coach. But he did a phenomenal job of whatever Spoelstra, Pat Riley did down there with him, grooming him, maturing him, helping him learn what it means to be a head coach, taking that there to Ann Arbor. He is putting together a team and a unit that I don't think is going to be just good this year. They're going to be good next year, the year after, the year after. They have so many pieces, as you alluded to earlier, that it's just a team brand of basketball. And I think the team brand of basketball was how they got together and said, hey, look, we can attack inside over and over and over. And by that attacking and Florida State's lack of ability to hit three-point shots and to really hit shots in general, 33% in the first half shooting from the field. I believe second half they were 40% from the shooting. Which when you're trying to, come back so much, you're fighting uphill the entire time.
Yeah.
Michigan knew Florida State's going to fight back, but we have to do what's needed in ourselves. Just attack the paint. I think at one point I saw on Twitter, Doug Gottlieb tweeted out, Michigan second half, 12 field goals, all 12 baskets were layups. I think the very next one with a three-pointer was to knock that away, but they were attacking inside, and they just said, say, look, we're playing way too good of defense. Florida State cannot score. They can't shoot the three, so it's just our game if we play our game.
19 assists for Michigan on 29 made field goals. midway through that second half, Jay, I think to echo your point there, Michigan had 10 made field goals. 9 of them came in the paint. They found something in the halftime locker room. They were up by 11 at the half. It was a great start for Michigan, really all 40 minutes against the Seminoles. But they found something specifically in that second half at the halftime break. And shout out to Juan Howard and Phil Martelli and the entire coaching staff he has assembled, because they were attacking the basket. Dribble drive, dump offs down low to Austin Davis, to Hunter Dickinson, to who was ever rolling. And the ball movement was fantastic. Mike Smith is a point guard in true concept of the word. He controls the pace of play, and I thought that was going to be key against FSU on Sunday. If Michigan could slow it down, play in their half-court sets where they are most effective, they were going to have a really good shot at winning that game. Florida State, with all their length and athleticism and how deep they play in their roster, 11 guys saw time on the floor for Florida State in the first half on Sunday against Michigan, that they would try to up the tempo. I thought Michigan at times early on were playing to Florida State's tempo, maybe pushing it a little bit too much, but Mike Smith, especially in that final 20 minutes, really settled things down and was in true command of that offense. And Jay, you bring up a great point about what Michigan did to Florida State on the defensive end of the floor. Florida State, a top 20 three-point shooting team throughout the course of the regular season. They have struggled in Indianapolis in the NCAA tournament. They advanced past UNCG in their first round game, not making a three. They did not hit a three in the first half. 0 of 7 from deep, where the Seminoles in those first 20 minutes ended the game 5 of 20, just 25% from deep, only shot 40% on the game. Michigan, not only do they play a team brand of basketball and how they facilitate and do things offensively, but also on the defensive end of the floor. And I think it starts with Franz Wagner, who somehow, Jay Stevens, was not on the all Big Ten defensive team this year. That baffles me.
Ben, that baffles you. That baffles me. I'm sure it baffles Juan Howard, and it maybe motivates Franz Wagner as well. When you're at the end of the Big Ten season, and as I was for the Ohio State Buckeye side, looking to see what team E.J. Liddell makes. I know he's making a team. Which team is it? Dwayne Washington Jr., does he make a team? What team is it? It was almost a foregone conclusion that Franz Wagner, all Big Ten something, yeah. I don't know what 1 through 5, whatever rank him, he's going to be on there, but he wasn't. And I think that he uses that as motivation, especially in this tournament run, especially maybe just using the same motivation Juwan Howard is using. People knocking him, people saying he won't do a good job, people saying that, oh, you have no head coaching experience, you don't know how to recruit. You can't go in somebody else's living room and recruit their young men and sell them on the Michigan brand that you don't know anything about how you're going to run it because you haven't done it before. And these are all things that not just Franz Wagner, but the entire team can do and say, look, people have knocked us, knocked our coach. My boy didn't make the all Big Ten defensive team, so we're going to rally around. But I think Franz Wagner uses that as motivation. He says, guys, Big Ten didn't recognize me. We're on the grandest of stages, playing on national TV every single game. More people are watching right now. Some people probably first round, not second round. The whole thing threw me off for the days, but right. People are taking off work to watch us. Let's put on a show. But also Franz Wagner is saying, let me remind everybody and inform certain people that I am an elite defender in college basketball.
Let's not forget, Juwan Howard is doing this in his second year at the helm of that Michigan basketball program. The Big Ten Coach of the Year, I think, will be the National Coach of the Year. And you mentioned a guy coming from the NBA ranks with no head coaching experience in the college game. Indiana fans might be learning from that and seeing that with Mike Woodson now. A lot of people were very skeptical of Juwan Howard taking over the Michigan basketball program with the lack of experience he had in the college game outside of playing for his alma mater. That is the exact situation we have here with Mike Woodson. Obviously, Juwan Howard, a little bit younger, maybe can relate to some of the high school recruits a little bit better than 63-year-old Mike Woodson, and we'll get into that discussion in just a few minutes. But that might be something that IU fans think of and say, hey, Juwan Howard could do it. Mike Woodson might have the criteria with some head coaching experience at the pro level to do the same. Players want to play for guys that are going to get them to that next level. Both Juwan Howard can sell that and Mike Woodson can as well. And Juwan Howard, like you mentioned, Jay, is building a program, not just for this season and their trip to the Elite Eight now, but for the future. The highest rated recruiting class coming in next year with 3 McDonald's All-Americans on the roster lining up next year in Ann Arbor. What Juwan Howard has done is incredibly, incredibly impressive. And what he continues to do now for Michigan, getting to the Elite Eight. It is going to be a very tough test, regardless of who they face, UCLA or Alabama. By the time you listen to this podcast, you will know the opponent. I believe it is going to be the Crimson Tide just because Alabama has been a tremendous college basketball team all year long. But Jay, let's just focus on Michigan here. Where do you think their ceiling is now as they are one of the final 8 teams playing in this college basketball season. Do you think it stops on Tuesday night in the Elite Eight? Or can Michigan, based on what they did Sunday against FSU, be a team that makes it to the Final Four weekend?
They can make it to the Final Four. I have no questions about that. No ifs, ands, or buts or anything. They can make it. I just always wonder, assuming I'm on the Alabama side just like you are, let's say Alabama does win. Let's say Nate Oates is doing something similar in the locker room, in the hotel room, maybe convention center where they're practicing in Indianapolis. Let's just say that Nate Oates and Juan Howard, they have the best game plan they've had all year, offensively and defensively, and they each have somebody off the bench. For Michigan, Shawnee Brown has been a phenomenal piece off the bench. I think last time you and I were on the show together, I think he had 21 points off the bench. So yeah, he is very, very good at coming off the bench, setting guys up, hitting open shots, and not playing out of himself, just playing consistently and filling his role. So let's just say they have both the same style of their best game plan. I want to get the nod to Michigan. I really, really do. But I think Alabama's shooting, it's just going to be a little bit too much. Also, my bracket, this is one of the games that I was puzzled, and I went back and forth. I went Michigan at first, but I took it back and said, no, Alabama's going to the Final Four this year. I'm still sticking with Alabama right now. I know that game's a couple days away from now, but I do believe that Alabama's going to be just a little bit too much, possibly an overtime 2 or 3 point game. I believe it's going to be close. I just think that Alabama will be a tad too much for Michigan right now.
And it will be something that we saw on Sunday against Florida State, where Michigan's going to try to have to do the same thing against Alabama, who, like Jay mentioned, plays a very fast-paced style, the 12th fastest tempo in all of the country. Their average possession length this year, just above 14 seconds. That is second fastest in the country. But the thing that people sleep on when it comes to Alabama, and a thing I've tried to remind people of because I've been high on the Crimson Tide all season long, is they are an incredible defensive team. Third most efficient defense in the country. You see their fast-paced style. You see their NBA style that Nate Oates likes to mirror with his team. They shoot threes. They like to get the ball down low. They're not a mid-range kind of game. They like to take threes, and they like to get the ball down low. The defense backs them up, and they have the SEC Player of the Year and the SEC Defender of the Year in Herb Jones as well. 42% of Alabama's shots come from deep. They take the third most three-pointers in all of college basketball per game. So Alabama will try to force that tempo, force that style of play against Michigan. But as we saw against FSU, with Mike Smith in control of that Michigan offense, they can certainly slow things down, and that's when they're most efficient in the half-court set as well. I also want to give compliments here to this Michigan team that has played a great team brand of basketball shorthanded without Isaiah Livers. And Juwan Howard spoke to that prior to the Florida State game, saying having a full week of practice here in Indianapolis after getting some licks in the NCAA tournament and adapting our schemes without Isaiah was a huge benefit. To do that now on a 48-hour turnaround as they are watching this game between UCLA and Alabama, scouting, getting that stuff ready to go is going to be difficult. But I think having that full week off between the round of 32 prior to this Sweet 16 matchup against Florida State was a huge benefit for Michigan and understanding and learning and continuing to gain that experience of how to play without Isaiah Livers.
Oh, yeah. That time off, that extra days, not really traveling. I think we lose sight of the not traveling from one site to another. Let's just say Michigan, they're here. Let's just say, Ben, Lexington, Kentucky was their first round site. So you had to go to Lexington, not that far away. And then they had to go, let's say they went to Indianapolis. NCAA's headquarters is in Indy. Let's just say they had to go to Indy for the Sweet 16 Elite Eight. Not that far of a travel from Lexington to Indianapolis, but it still is travel. It still is packing up, picking up, going other places. Those players that are injured or hurt, you can't get that extra 30 minutes or an hour of rehab or treatment by your medical team because you have to travel. So I do now. That's just a small little scale. They're the number one seed, so it is in their favor to stay in the Midwest there. But keep that in mind when Juwan Howard's having to try to put these game plans together. He's not on an airplane or in an Uber. He's literally in his hotel room, maybe on a Zoom call with the other coaches, saying, "Well, here's what I see. What do you see?" And they're putting their heads together at one time. That's one added advantage that Michigan has had this year. Yes, every other team that's playing is right now in Indianapolis. That's true. But he knows that extra time to put that game plan together without one of the key pieces with no travel, that aided him right now in this year's tourney.
I think it's a great point. Michigan is the number 1 seed in the East region. That game would probably be played somewhere out on the East Coast. You could think of Madison Square Garden, where they've had it in the past. The regional semifinals and finals, Sweet 16 and Elite 8 weekend, would be somewhere on the East Coast. They'd be traveling from wherever the first round site was that they played at. That's a great point to evaluate. Yes, you could think about how these teams have been kind of sequestered in their bubbles, in their hotels, in that bubble-like environment in downtown Indianapolis. How do you keep 18, 19, 20-year-olds entertained? And Big Ten teams have been there since 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now for the Big Ten tournament. How do you keep them entertained this all along, but not having to travel and getting that extra prep time with a team that needs to learn how to play without their second leading scorer coming into this NCAA tournament? I think that's a great point as well, Jay Stevens. So we have a couple of more minutes here on the Stevens and Stevens podcast on a Monday, March 29th. Michigan advancing, living to fight another day in the NCAA tournament. They will take on the winner of Alabama and or UCLA in the Elite 8 game. But Michigan on to the Elite 8. Jay, you are not only the host of Locked On Buckeyes, you are a guy that lives in the state of Indiana. And the Indiana Hoosiers basketball program making a big hire on Sunday afternoon, bringing back one of their own. Mike Woodson will be the new head coach for Indiana next season. What did you make of that move for the Hoosiers?
That was a big time move. And forgive me, I normally come prepared. I was going to change hats from my own podcast hat to an IU hat, which I have in my closet, but I was not properly prepared for this show. Excuse me, at least with the headwear. But I think it can be big. It can be good. I'm not going to be a guy that's going to come out here and say, Jay is an old head. He's an old guy. He's been around for a while. He's 63 years old. He's not going to be very good. I'm not going to be that guy, Ben. He comes right after his very first year was right after the undefeated season in 76. He played at Indiana from 76 until 80. So he came right after that historic run that IU had, that Gonzaga is trying to be the second or the most recent undefeated national champion in college basketball. Many people say here locally, Mike Woodson, why? He's never, same thing to say about Juan Howard. He's never coached in college. He was a below average NBA head coach. He's been an assistant most of his time period. How was he going to recruit? I think what Mike Woodson knows, I hint his number. I say his age for a reason. Mike Woodson knows the importance of formulating a good coaching staff. Guys that can help you out with recruiting. Guys that can help you out when it comes to the travel in college and the tutor sessions and make sure the guys keep their grades up. Another thing, Ben, I don't know if you're going to add this. I'll say it right now. I think IU is already going to say, we're going to help Mike Woodson in ways that he may not expect. Hiring Thad Matta to properly help the basketball program, kind of like an advisory role, that was huge. And I believe that Thad Matta's family or daughter may go to Butler right down in Indianapolis. She may have graduated, but he also was already an Indiana guy, coached at Butler before going to Ohio State. So these are all things that Thad Matta's saying, if I want to come back, one, it has to make sense for my family. And two, has to make sense in the right role, advisory role at Thad Matta's age, a lot better than the travel of college basketball team. I think Mike Woodson, the X's and O's guy that he is phenomenal. He would not be an NBA assistant for this long if he did not know his basketball and how to properly dissect the X's and O's of every single game.
You bring up a great point about Thad Matta. Indiana hiring him as the associate athletic director for men's basketball. He will be a guy to help Mike Woodson assemble his staff, assemble this transition in Bloomington. By the way, Mike Woodson already on campus in Bloomington, meeting with his team on Sunday evening, trying to bring back a lot of the guys that Indiana has currently in the transfer portal to fill out his roster for next season. But Thad Matta, who is a great basketball mind, was a great basketball coach at Ohio State before health issues severely declined what he was able to do. That's why he walked away in 2017. It got so bad based on back surgeries, Jay, that Thad said at times he couldn't even put on his own shoes. He couldn't bend over. He couldn't walk. So those health issues aside, I don't think Thad Matta is ready to be back on the sideline on a daily basis, but to be involved in the brain trust to try to get Indiana back to where Hoosier fans want them to be, I think is a huge component of this Mike Woodson hiring as well. I think IU fans do have a right to be skeptical about the hire, knowing what Indiana has in the reservoir to try to go get and what the expectation level of the fan base is in some of the names that were floated in this coaching search by yours truly, Big Ten Ben, advocating for another B. Stevens to make his way to Bloomington, and that being Brad Stevens. Obviously that not coming to fruition, but they had their sights set on Scott Drew from Baylor, Chris Beard from Texas Tech. So I think Mike Woodson at first was, what are we doing here? This is how the search ended up. we're bringing back a guy that has zero college coaching experience, that other than the fact he played for Indiana, that's really his only criteria, his only resume, plus his NBA head coaching experience. But since he left playing in Indiana, he hasn't been back in the college ranks. So I think Indiana fans can be a little bit skeptical, as I am as well, because there takes so much different level on the college game to be a successful head coach. You bring up a great point. Mike Woodson is a fantastic basketball mind, will drill in the X's and O's, and will be a great basketball coach. But how does a 63-year-old who has been in the NBA for 20 plus years, now trying to recruit high school kids, how does he relate to them? How does he make that recruiting pitch? How does he say to them, hey, I was in the NBA, I can get you there, but he's not a name that people know like Juan Howard just on the paper of knowing who Mike Woodson is. That's where I have some skepticism, but I do believe that Indiana will give him the resources to fill out a very good staff, and I think that's where Mike Woodson might have some success. We're talking about a head coach who had a below 500 head coaching record in the NBA. He has had very little success in the playoffs in the NBA. 9 seasons as a head coach, got to the playoffs 5 times for the Knicks and the Hawks combined. I just have a little bit of questions about who are you bringing in other than the fact that he's a former Indiana guy, but by all accords, a great basketball mind and somebody that truly does understand the Indiana basketball program. He's from the Indianapolis area. He played under Bob Knight at Indiana. So that could be something to give them some spark. I think Indiana fans have the right to be skeptical based on his past track record and what he does not have in the college game and his age as well. How are we building our program around this guy? But I think they also have reasons to be hopeful that Mike Woodson understands what it means to play and coach basketball at IU and will assemble a good coaching staff that starts with a guy on the executive level or administrative level, the AD, the associate AD now in Thad Matta, looking over that men's basketball program. So Jay, a wonderful Stevens and Stevens podcast with you on this Monday, covering so many things. Michigan advancing to the Elite Eight. Mike Woodson, the new head coach for Indiana men's basketball. But speaking of those Hoosiers, a historic moment for Indiana women's basketball on Saturday evening, advancing to the program's first ever Elite Eight. So we give them a round of applause right now. Moving on to the Elite Eight, Maryland and Texas in action late on a Sunday night. We believe the Terps, as the 2 seed, will move on. Hopefully, we have 2 Big Ten teams in the Elite Eight of the NCAA women's tournament in basketball as well. Jay Stevens, the host of Locked On Buckeyes, my right-hand man and co-host here on the Stevens and Stevens podcast on a Monday. Always appreciate your time, my man.
Yes, sir, Ben. It's been fun. It's fun watching the basketball all the time. It's fun watching the women as well. Men's tournament, women's tournament. IU has a basketball coach now. Michigan's playing in the Elite Eight. Your job is getting a whole lot easier with Michigan still in on the men's side. So I'm sure you're smiling a little bit bigger this week than last week, and the possibility of a Final Four appearance and Big Ten Ben being able to wear the Big Ten hat on Final Four Saturday. That is a possibility, and Ben, it's always going to be fun to be here with you. Can't wait till next week to see what is happening between Friday to Sunday that we can talk about.
Jay, I'm feeling a little bit more hopeful than I was at this point last Sunday. So that's a very, very good sign. All we need to see, one more game in the month of March is all you can ask for a basketball program in the NCAA tournament. We push off spring football and the NFL draft for another week. So yes, the Big Ten still dancing in both the big dance on the men's side and on the women's side as well. Jay Stevens, the host of Locked On Buckeyes. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. It was fun.